ever feel alone in the culture war or see everything around you crumbling to ashes and dust and you're kind of tired of it, but you feel like there's no one out there that would support you? Well, I've got 3 sites that actually might change your mind. So, first we have MetaPCs. MetaPCs is a fantastic PC making company. They'll have pre-mades, they'll have all sorts of customs that you can make. You can get cases, possibly engravings and all that type of stuff. Like whatever you want, they can get it working for you. And they've got some pretty snazzy stuff. So check out MetaPCs. You can use the Geeks and Gamers code, which is 199, in order to get a percentage off of whatever you want to purchase. Check them out. Another one that's also really good is DEG Mods. DEG Mods and Ayaka Mods, which I will show you in a second, both share a common enemy in Nexus Mods. So if you've ever tried modding a game, Nexus Mods has been more pro-censorship and not allowing you, the gamer, to pick what you want to pick, play what you want to play, and mod your game the way you want to mod your game, because they don't believe you have the right because it might be politically inconvenient for them. So both DEG Mods and Ayaka Mods are both alternatives, and there are others, but these are the 2 main ones that I've heard about that can definitely change your view on who's out there and who's supporting what you yourself are looking for in any type of game or otherwise. Modding sites can be not safe for work, so please use your own discernment and know that you're not alone. There are other people like myself and Geeks and Gamers, Nerdrotic, and the hundreds if not thousands of other channels that are trying to do something good in the YouTube sphere against this pretty nasty counterstroke against us. So check out those 3 sites if you are interested in supporting those that support us. I make no money off of this. This is purely because I support what they do. So have a great day. And we are good to go. Hello, welcome, my friends and enemies. Glad you are here. I am once again joined with Supreme Inquisitor Metatron, which I really wanted to say Ratatata, but yes. It's a Pokemon, don't you know? But yes, how you doing, Matt?
Well, I'm doing well, my friend. How are you?
I can feel better, but I am here and I'm in a good mood, I suppose.
You need some good drugs, my friend. You need some drugs.
I don't like taking any type of drug if I can help it. Um, I'm all natural, happy, and humorous, so you can call it that anyway. So, we've been chatting about our last video, and we've been chatting about stop killing games and where it was at.
Yeah.
Where do you think it's at now? Just curious.
Well, I'm only going to talk from the perspective of the United States because I don't care too much what happens in other countries. It's the state of games in general.
I mean specifically more like how many people have signed for it, because they were struggling to get to 500,000. So how many people do you think they're at now?
150,000 somewhere around there.
150,000. They were at 455,000 when we did the last
Oh,
video.
I thought they were lower than that. Anyway,
That was the UK.
well,
You're thinking of probably.
maybe did they pass 500K?
You were correct. 749,000 signatures with about less than a month to go, I believe. Probably
Yeah,
like
but
3
you
weeks
can
to go.
get. I mean, to be skeptical about it, you can get 700,000 signatures for like crazy environmental shit too.
Sure.
So it's like,
Sure. Well,
I mean,
this isn't to make things law. This is to get lawmakers to look at the issue. Excuse me.
yeah,
So it's just amazing that in the 1 week we've been since the video came. Well, I guess technically the video came out yesterday or a couple days ago. Um, in the time period since we've recorded the video, it's gone up about 250,000, which is impressive. Now there have been a lot of bigwigs in the YouTube sphere that have opened up about this. You got Mudahar, you've got Asmongold, Legendary Drops, even Josh Strife Hayes and other people have inputted themselves, and even the almighty PewDiePie has jumped in on it and has even made his voice known on the Twitters about his support for Stop Killing Games. So it's a bit of a something that's gotten a lot of traction. Obviously, you had what's his name, Penguin Moist Critical, Penguin 2.0 or whatever. However you say
And that's fine and all. I mean, I have no.
No, I'm
I
saying
don't.
it's just a lot of people have become aware of it, and it has exploded from the awareness aspect.
The problem I'm going to have with what I said last week, which is this is fine and all, but I can almost guarantee that politicians will use this. Like if they try to make a law about this, they'll always make something worse down the line, right?
Sure, but I
It's
mean, it's
also,
already worse as it is now without the law, and there are even some laws that are just being ignored. So,
the rule should be like if they're going to pass any law, it's um if if you choose to make a version of the game that can be installed and run on a local computer, you must have that version work without any online component. That'll be the only law I'd want. You know,
well,
so
they're
that
they're trying to make it specifically for things that you actually like purchase. So if you like buy Guild Wars 2,
well,
World of
no, but
Warcraft, those are the games you'd have to have an end of life strategy of having a private server or handing over server concepts to people for them to actually make themselves, as opposed to somebody like League of Legends, which is purely free. So if they close down League of Legends, it's like, well, then they close down League of Legends, that kind of a thing. But I,
well, the issue to me is what the other guy brought up last week, right? It was
which is the other
there are
guy?
some,
There's a couple.
yeah,
Are you talking about Pirate
they only
Software?
spent they only spent 5 hours on last week. That dude,
Yeah, Pirate
um,
Software.
yeah,
Yeah.
that there are a certain type of game, which is quite a lot of them now, which is they're online only in the sense that the only thing that runs locally on your computer is like you get a stream of pre-rendering info that your graphics card renders locally. That's all you get, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's no game physics locally. There's no characters information storage or whatever. There's no gameplay mechanics. It's
Well, it's
all
client to server.
online.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
So
But that
and that
that
seems to
that
be the
client to server
majority.
thing is something you could easily adjust comparative to, like, if you're building your entire system on that, then you would just move that
It,
server to a private thing that people
out
themselves
of
would hope to.
out of the context of someone has to pay for it, yeah, it's easy to do. Um,
Well, I'm saying in terms of, okay, because the whole point of Stop Killing Games and the guy who's running the Stop Killing Games initiative has specifically stated this isn't necessarily to go retroactive. It's to go from now on, which personally I'd rather go retroactive and on, because otherwise, from now, anything prior to now would be considered abandonware, and it's fair game for anybody to get access to any of that type of stuff. And the companies that would have the quote unquote rights to those things would have to release their either. I don't want necessarily their code out there, but whatever would get the servers running and whatnot would have to be released in that regard. But abandoned, if it's become abandonware, anybody can do whatever they want with it, because I mean, one, they're not making money off of it anyway. But things like from now on, it's like, hey, if you're gonna make a game, have an EOL end of life plan for what you're gonna do when you
well, that would
stop
be another
carrying it.
thing I would want in the law. If you make a game and you don't produce a current version of that game, after 15 years, it goes to the public domain.
That could work
Not,
too.
not mind you, not the
But they'd still have to give the information and all the data and everything to
well, not
somebody.
I want to clarify, not the secondary licensing you may have. Like you may make a game based on the Wheel of Time, and after 15 years, if you don't make sequel to it, the game goes into the public domain, but the Wheel of Time content doesn't go with it because that's obviously a
Well,
separate
yeah,
license.
that's somebody else's content you're just using, but that specific game itself would.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, it's
yeah,
the same. It's the same concept when we're like, I buy. I don't know. Let me find. I have a game sitting right here. I think. Boop. Yep, I do. Okay, I have games sitting everywhere. All right, Punisher, fantastic game. Don't screw with the no cheese. So if I buy this, I am not buying the IP of the Punisher. I am not buying Marvel Comics or Marvel as entirety. Like, I'm not buying. What I'm buying is this. They make a game with this, specifically the Punisher, in this particular concept. It does not mean I own Frank Castle. It does not mean I own the Punisher logo. It does not mean I own trademarks. It does not mean, like, everyone who makes that argument is making a very ill-informed argument, and it's very lacking in intelligence. But what it is I'm purchasing the product that was made with those things. And I have this disc here, and with this disc, I have rights to this disc, this product I purchased. This is not a lease. I never once saw a lease button, hit the lease button, and expected I owned it. But anytime the company uses purchase or buy or any terminology of that nature, and then try to turn around and say, oh, well, it actually is a lease or a license. It's like, no, 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 no. When I buy music online, I may be quote unquote licensing to listen it because I don't own the band. I don't own the album because that's a ridiculous concept. But I do own those audio files. I purchased them. They cannot be withheld from me after I have purchased them. So that's kind of where people are misunderstanding.
No, but so okay.
How this works.
Let me clarify something. When I say into the public domain, I don't mean just anyone can play it or whatever. I mean, after 15 years, if the company doesn't make a succeeding version of that game, their actual code and stuff would go into the public domain, so anyone could use that code.
Sure, but the problem is that the whole stop killing games, what you're saying would not prevent that game from being killed, because all they have to do is make another game, a different game. But if people, like, it's like when Guild Wars 1 came out. They now have it in maintenance mode, so they don't actively do updates or patches. But then they make Guild Wars 2. But if this was the case, then Guild Wars 1, if they shut down the servers, it would be gone forever.
But this is why you have lawsuits, okay? So then you go to, then let's say they do that. Let's say they make, like, Bob Wars 5 or whatever, right? And
Bob Wars 5.
Yeah, and Bob Wars 1 should be in the public domain because it's 15 years old, right? And they're claiming, well, no, because with Bob Wars 5, Bob Wars 1 is still under a cover, right? So you're going to sue them and say, well, no, Bob Wars 5 is such a different game, has way better graphics, all sorts of stuff like that. That it's such a different game that you have to keep putting Bob Wars 1 out, or maybe Bob Wars 2 because it looks a lot more like Bob Wars 1, to keep or you have to put Bob Wars 1 into the public domain, like, because you can't keep it for the time unless you're producing something that is like that original game, if not quite that original game.
I mean, I have a few problems with that analogy, and that's mostly because, like, for example, Guild Wars 1 is an instance-based system. It's like an MMO, but it's not like the typical MMO you might think of. It's not like you go outside and you see 1,000 people wandering around or whatever. It's up to like 8 people in an instance, but it's a massive area of an instance. But every time a person goes in there, it's on their computer is making another instance, or I guess it could be the client, but the client would be overwhelmed with that many instances, I'd imagine. So having them create it, because they download the stuff onto your computer, and then you access those instances. And as you go into those instances, you can pull other people with you from a town, go into those instances, do all that stuff. But Guild Wars 2 is open world, and you go through a portal into essentially an instance room that everybody else is going into. And you're in this area that has a title or whatever. And you can leave that instance and go to another instance, which is a different map. But the combat's completely different. It's real-time, like, dodge kind of combat, like action-packed combat, as opposed to turn-based combat.
Yeah, so that's a different enough game. And a lawsuit, you would say, wait a minute.
But that's not the issue, though. They're already 2 different games. The fact that they're 2 different games is in itself a problem for the developer to make that argument. Because if I say, hey, you shut down Guild Wars 1 servers, I paid you money to buy into that game, So I have the right to continue playing that game for as long as I desire to. And thus, the game should be put in a state which it does not require other input in that regard from the company. And I don't think they should be forced to maintain a server per se. I think they should be put to the point where they have to figure a way, whether it be make it completely single player or single player with a peer-to-peer connection, something extremely simplistic like that comparative to what else they could possibly come up with. And then just like, all right, you bought it, you have access to it. Because just because it has an online or a online all the time kind of, or always online, I guess is the proper term, always online feature, it should not inherently mean, oh, we can dump this whenever we want to and we have no repercussions whatsoever, because that would be scumbag and unethical and arguably immoral in every way you could possibly shake a stick at it. Because I could literally just make something, people buy it, and then I would just pull the carpet from underneath them and say, oh, well, we've only been open for 30 minutes, but I'm taking all your money and I'm leaving and I'm making a lot of money. I don't have to pay for any server upkeep. I don't have to pay for developers. I don't have to do anything because I can just, whoosh, when you say, no. You have contracts. You have to pay your developers and your employees. You have to pay for your marketing. You got to pay for your electrical. You got to pay for your brick and mortar. You got to pay for the servers that you are loading everything up onto. You got to pay for all the software development. You got to pay for. You can't just be like, oh no, I can just leave. I mean, it's not Kickstarter. You can't just be like, oh, well, you may or may not get this product and it's your own fault if you don't get the product. It's like, no. The people need to give what they're supposed to or be punished for it because they're trying to commit fraud. But if we're going to argue, because I would agree with you that politicians can go really far with things, but even from your own perspective, the government is supposed to be in charge of the economy to some extent.
Well, no, the government would regulate the economy.
Well, regulation would be laws, things that prevent certain behaviors from happening, correct?
That's not necessarily being in charge of it. That's
if you're telling everybody what to do, you're in charge of it. That's how that works.
But telling everyone what to do will be telling you what to buy and
no. If you're telling everybody what they can and cannot do through laws and regulations, you're telling them, I can tell you at any moment in time that you can or cannot do said thing. That's literally what it is. If you could tell a hospital you cannot do this thing, or you have to do this thing to even open your doors, then you're telling them, I can tell you when I'm going to shut you down. I could send an FDA person in right now and shut your entire hospital down in a heartbeat. You're telling them what to do. You're running the gig. Now, in everyday business practices, the government's not sitting there telling them what to do. But they have the power and the ability to go in there and shut something down if they smell something fishy, or if they're not complying with the rules and regulations that they're being set upon.
That's called regulation, okay?
Yes, it's called being in charge. That's what it is. So if you think that the EU creating a law or a regulation on game developers would mean they would always step over their bounds, why would we think that they wouldn't do that for regulations?
Well, they do, which is, again, why we should be anti-regulation as much as possible.
I am hardcore anti-regulation, but the same point is that the government does have a responsibility to prevent its constituents, citizens, from being screwed over by somebody else. So somebody else comes in and pulls a fast one. The person who pulls the fast one should be punished because they're trying to do something to somebody else in a harmful manner.
So just like there's a philosophy for science, there's a philosophy for government as well, right? So you have to, using your philosophy for government, you have to say, what should the government actually do and to what degree, right?
To as little degree as possible outside of protecting its constituents.
I don't. That's a different sort of point, but yeah,
I know, but I'm saying, like, if you want to minimize the damage potentially caused by politicians who recklessly do things like a wrecking ball in whatever they touch, you need to make it as small of an impact as possible. But asking a government to do what they're already supposed to be doing anyway, I don't understand why that would be a complicated matter for anybody to particularly disagree with, because I agree they could potentially run wild with it and do things that is actually even worse than what we have now.
But this law, when they pass a stop killing games law, It's going to be a bill that's like 800 pages with a million legal codicils and all that, and there'll be exploitable stuff in there. And then 2 years later, we'll have to pass Stop Killing Games 2.0 to fix it, and they'll throw more crap in there.
Sad that I knew you were going to say 2.0.
And then 5 years later, we'll have to Stop Killing Games.
3.5 because we're already
Yeah,
jumping
or whatever. and that and that's the history of all war works. It's like the law of entropy for legal stuff that always gets more complicated.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is like, is the government supposed to prevent somebody from committing fraud against somebody else who gives them money or participates in whatever they're operating as
I would
in a say
say,
of good faith? If you came to me and said, I will offer you this item for your hard-earned cash, and I give you my hard-earned cash expecting said item, and then you say, sorry, I don't have the item, but I'm keeping your cash, you'd expect the government to step in, would you not?
well, that's the whole snake oil salesman argument, right?
I mean, it's not a snake oil salesman, it's an actual thing that happens on a regular basis.
Well, no, what I
Scam
mean
artist.
is that snake oil salesman was selling you snake oil, basically, and saying it would cure cancer and shit like that.
Yes, and for doing that, that is what we call fraud.
Correct.
So,
But
if somebody is committing fraud,
okay,
which is a crime, should the government
but
not step in and say, you're not allowed to do that, you're
well,
going to be
this
punished
goes
for
down
doing that?
to what is fraud? Are tarot card readers fraud?
Are tarot card readers fraud? I don't know much about tarot card readers, so I don't necessarily know. If you're referring to like the psychic kind of mentality, if they're saying,
Well,
I will give you an experience that may tell you something about your future, then that's one thing. But if they're saying this is going to be your future and that future never comes to pass, I would say that's fraud. It's in the wording.
there's the process of reading tarot cards does not necessarily involve purported psychic abilities.
Well, I'm just saying
There's
I'm more familiar with the concept of a psychic ability than I am with
yeah.
tarot cards.
The point I'm using it though is for that there are people who argue that is fraud.
I mean, you're fooling somebody, but it's more of an attraction than an actual like. If you
Well,
go if you went to a tarot card reader and said, if you give me the cards say, if you give me all your life savings that you will be successful within 3 days, that would be fraud. But if they're saying something interesting is bound to happen in your life for $15 and you're going there for the experience to figure out something, then that you're paying for that
okay,
experience, but the
you're
outcome.
targeting, you're focused on specifics. What I'm trying to say is
Yeah, that's how it
that
works.
that no, but the government passes laws for generalities, okay, not specifics. So
Yes, but
they
it's
must.
always going to be based on intent. Intent of saying, I'm making a contractual
It's
agreement
not.
through selling a goods and services
Well,
to fulfill
contract
said
law,
goods
yeah,
and services. Well, what's the goods and service of a tarot reader? To tell you something that you
that's
probably
because
want to
it
hear.
involves that's because it involves a contract with services and all that. But the actual fraud is a crime. So, uh, like, are you going to say that tarot card reading is a crime now?
No, I don't think that's a crime. Not any more than I think in amusement parks. Like, oh, if you come here, you'll have a good time. And I go there and I don't have a good time. I'm not going to say, fraud! I'm going to say, I did not experience what I was hoping to experience. Because you can go to a tarot reader and they could say, oh, I have bad news. But you're going there knowing that you're paying X amount of money for them to tell you something. Whether you believe them or not is on you.
So,
But that's not a sale of
what
a
what
good or
I'm getting at with
service.
this stop killing games thing is that these politicians aren't just going to pass this in a vacuum, right? So
I don't think so. No.
they're going to want, like, for example, the ability to prosecute people who violate this, just just to make clear
I
on
mean,
say,
that's the whole reason this is happening, is to tell people don't do something, and if you violate it, you're going to be punished. That's literally how just laws work.
yeah. So then we'll come down to prosecutors interpreting this law based on the 748 pages it's going to be as to what constitutes killing a game. Like for example, if a dude dies, right, and the game can't be altered to be online, offline, or whatever, do you sue his family, or do you prosecute his wife or whatever? Because he says, "I'm fucking, I'm done with this. I'm not authorizing anything." You know,
Well, they
I
could
don't.
just establish it as an abandonware, and then you could literally just take it and reconstruct it and make it something. Because
Well, so
people,
but
fans do that all the time for games that are abandonware.
but what if his wife is like, fuck it, I don't care. I don't want nothing to do with it. I'm not gonna. I'm
Sure, but
not.
for every software that's out there, there is a pirated copy, good sir. There is something of existence of that game
Well, that's
or
why I
of that
said.
software in
That's why I said.
existence, so you can reconstruct it if necessary.
But that's why I said we should have the law structure such that these older games are automatically in the public domain, except for the third-party content. Now, the
Yeah,
game
but are
itself.
they old games when they're dead, or are they old games well after they're dead? Because if I pay to play a game like Guild Wars 1 and they try to kill it, well, I paid for the game. I don't want to wait 15 years to play the game I enjoy playing. You see my problem with that?
No, but see, that wouldn't be a problem with my scenario.
I mean, if I have to wait 15 years, there's a big problem there.
You'd be playing. Okay. Um, I'm going to phrase this
With
again.
words.
There are no perfect solutions to this, right?
I mean, there are some reasonable ones, and I think reasonable is all that is necessary.
Well,
Like, if modders and fans can come together and say, we take this abandonware game and say, we want to be able to play this with each other across, peer to peer, whatever the case might be. There's like no actual hosting. Like, the only hosting aspect is the connection of peer to peer. So it's like a hub where the peer to peer comes, they join in the games, and the game runs from peer to peer perspective. So there's no actual hosting per se necessary. It's just a software that connects peer to peer. If you have that made completely by fans and reconstructed as its own standalone system from a company that has not made a game like that for a freaking long time, like 20 years or something. Well, that's already been happening. So we're not asking them per se to ramp everything up if they're like if the company is no longer together, the rights are owned by some random company that doesn't even deal in video games or studios or anything. We're not even saying that they have to do anything, as much as it's now okay for us to take that, whether it be on a disc, whether it be on a cartridge, or whatever the case might be, even if it's a pirated copy, to take that and say, yeah, it's okay to have this freely distributed because it's been abandoned, and now we can make something work. That's the bare minimum requirement, and that should be fine. Because it's like, we just want to make sure that if I buy a game, pick a game, I've got a whole bunch behind me, and I've got a huge stack over there. You pick a game, and you're just like, hey, I want to be able to play the product I bought. So if I buy something, if I buy a phone, or if I buy a lamp, I want the product I purchase to continue as long as possible. Some things die out naturally because they cease to work, but you can buy parts and you can replace them. In the situation of them turning off a game, I can't find parts to replace it because legally they quote unquote own the copyright, the trademark, and blah 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 blah, blah all the IP
well, that's
stuff.
why you have to shorten the lifespan of trademark or whatever.
Sure, but my thing is if I would agree with your system, just like if it was just that way, and it had a clause that says if they end server or any type of life of the game, and they're just cutting it off, at that moment it's cut off, it's automatically cut off into public domain. That I'd be fine with, but that would have to be a part of it. Otherwise, if they don't do it in 15 years,
that's
then
that's why I would say, like, again, this is a nuanced sort of thing. You can't just pass a generic law that covers everything. There'll be laws that cover older games.
The whole concept is, are you going heavily online? Have an end of life plan. That's literally it. It's that simple. The modders and gamers will take care of the other aspects. Now, it'll suck also a lot for things like PS5 or Xbox gamers, and possibly even Nintendo gamers, because if the game goes offline, they don't have a way to play it because there's no Game Ranger. Jiminy Christmas. One's a software site, one's not. Game Ranger is on PC. It's not on PlayStation. It's not on Xbox. They have no way to compare to each other, so they'd have to have a single player mode version of whatever they're buying. Otherwise, they're left in the cold. So it's like, if you're going to build a game, build it with a plan that keeps in mind that you have constituents that want to continue playing what they purchased. And if you're going to rent it to them or lease it to them, be prepared to not sell nearly as much as you were thinking you would, because we're not going to just blindly, necessarily, as actual gamers as opposed to normies, we're not going to just blindly purchase this stuff. I mean, it's the same reason I haven't bought anything from Epic Game Store ever, because of how when they came into existence, how they acted in terms of their own store. I like Gears of War, which is an Epic Games thing, but I did not buy it ever on Epic itself. And anytime they had something that was an exclusive for a year, 6 months, or whatever, I didn't buy those either, because I don't support that behavior. That's what I would expect gamers who want to be able to play their own games to do, those kind of things. But
Yeah.
when it comes to consoles, they don't have any recourse whatsoever, unless PlayStation comes out with a patch that lets you like connect PS5 and Game Ranger together, so you can like peer to peer with somebody, or whatever the situation might be. But if they don't do that, then consoles are just out of luck, which I would argue is one reason that consoles are inferior to PC, but that's a different story. But all people are asking for through the Stop Killing Games initiative is that they have an end of life plan, and that plan includes that through the development of the game, that game would come into existence, and it would have, by the time it ends, their online only or always online or whatever shtick. If it is a game you purchased, not microtransactions, but like you actually purchased, like I purchased an actual copy of Guild Wars 1 Prophecies, Guild Wars 1 Factions, Guild Wars 1 Nightfall, Guild Wars 1 Eye of the North. I actually purchased them. They're physical boxes I have that have the discs that has all the installation stuff on it that I then would connect to the internet, and then that's how I could play with other people, right? Like, it's an actual physical thing. It's a physical box of Guild Wars 1 Collector's Edition with a bunch of other stuff. I have a physical box of Guild Wars 2. Like, they can't just shut it down and then leave me hanging. I have right to keep playing the game I purchased from them because they sold it to me. Keywords: purchased, buy, sold, things like that. They did not say, just because they have terms of service does not mean they can just terms of service your rights away, in terms of like, if I purchase something, they can't just say, well, we decided you don't actually own it or have ownership of the game anymore despite you paying us money, so we're going to kick you out and say ta-ta. Like, you can't do that.
Well, okay, we're circling the same ground again, okay?
Yeah, I know.
I'm
trying to make sure it's understandable.
We're not disputing, like, conceptually, I'm not disputing with you. My problem is
the government's going to do stupid stuff. Yes, I agree.
People, I mean, the government's people are going to do stupid stuff. So,
I agree, 100%.
We need to make laws in this case that are very narrow, tailored, very narrowly, and that don't make a problem potentially worse. You know.
Well, true, but I would argue that laws technically exist in the day and age before it even has to go there, and just say, did you sell them this product? Yes. They have ownership of it. End of discussion. And then just stick it with that.
With that, okay? And we talked about this before. Laws like that are specific to the product. Meaning, when you go in to look at like laws for like theft of, I don't know, food, right? In the law, it says this theft covers the content, like, okay, let's be specific. Robbery, okay, versus burglary. Let's say you're going to charge someone with robbery for something, and you go read the statute. It's going to say robbery covers food, clothing, blah 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 blah. And if it's not in that, like if video game is not on that list, you can't charge someone with robbery for it. Okay.
Well, by the same extension of that, they can't charge us with piracy if we pirate it.
But there are laws that specifically cover that.
Well, yes, but I would argue against those being valid, because if we're not going to just cover private property, if I purchase something, like,
the courts have already upheld DMCA.
If I purchase, oops, I did not mean to turn my PS5 on. If I purchase this controller and or the PS5 I have, there is no without exception, no exception for anybody from Sony to show up, Pinkertons or otherwise, and take this from me. Zero. None. It is my personal private property. Just kind of redundant, but it is my personal private property. If this was digital, it should not have any differentiation.
Well,
period.
But here's the issue. This is what you're not understanding, okay? It's not that philosophically it's very different. It's mechanically, right? So the if you pass a law for robbery, let's say, because we're talking robbery, um, you can't. They don't just pass generic like anytime something is stolen. All right, the law says what can be stolen in it, and then when something new
Private
comes
property.
along, like
there you go.
like when something new comes along, like say digital content, then you pass laws that either amend the old law to put that into robbery or create a new crime like robbery of digital content.
Well, because I believe robbery can involve violence and burglary does not inherently.
But burglary is breaking entry. Robbery is burglary plus stealing stuff.
Okay, so
like if you just break an entrance someplace, that's burglary. Okay. Whereas if you break, if you do
break in and then you grab something and run off with it,
yeah, that's robbery.
Okay, so that's why there's a distinction, is because they actually cover different kinds of how something went down. So a burglary plus is robbery, but a burglary alone is just a burglary. That makes perfect sense. But if you burgle, so to speak, I love that because technically Bilbo would be a robber then, but that's a different story.
Yeah.
But
well, no, they hired him to be a burglar. He became a robber.
That too.
But he was only supposed to break in and go scout. He wasn't supposed to take anything.
Yeah.
But they didn't want. He wasn't supposed to alert the dragon to his presence.
Because dragons are that bad at smelling. But in terms of like, if somebody says, okay, I'm going to take something, that which I have already, it's like if you give somebody a gift, at what point can you take that gift back? There's a simple answer. You can't.
Well, again, I'm not disagreeing with you in a concept. I'm saying the law, when you're going to pass laws for this stuff, you have to be it's a complex thing, and governments will always.
I know they'll make it complicated because that's what they do. But I'm saying it's not that complicated. If it's mine and you take it from me, that's
the legal
theft.
structure is inherently complicated, right? And because there's going to be a lot of verbiage in like the bill for Stop Killing Games or whatever, right? And then so the bill for Stop Killing Games is going to make a bill, right? And then it's going to amend a whole bunch of other laws, trade laws like trademark, laws governing robbery, laws governing, software production, digital rights, and all that. And so there's going to be a huge patch, basically. It's literally going to be a patch on existing law, right? It's like a law patch. It's supposed to be
it's an update, yeah.
Yeah. And then that's going to take existing laws, new legal challenges, blah, 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 testing them in the courts. And ultimately, some politicians, because there's only one dude who starts it, say, wait a minute.
1 minute, I'm retarded. How about we do this?
This gaming company didn't, and if it didn't.
This gaming company paid me a lot of money to kill this bill. Come on.
No, this gaming company had a game that only had 3 people playing it, but they got defrauded or whatever because of they didn't turn it into an offline game.
How many innocents have to be harmed?
I'm gonna wedge my way into this company and and get $1 billion for out of them or whatever,
Well, again, how many innocents does it take for a crime to be committed?
None.
There has to be a victim of some sort for a crime to be committed.
The victim is not necessarily innocent, is what I'm getting at.
Well, are they active in the crime?
Could have been.
Well, then they wouldn't be innocent.
That's what I said.
I know, but I'm saying for a crime to take place, there has to be an innocent. So if they don't fit the
No, there doesn't.
category of sure.
If for example, let's say you rob a bank and the
If somebody
police
runs
kill,
up and clocks you in the face, are you an innocent victim?
um,
Or are you just like, well, I can't be innocent because I've
okay,
done things?
if you are fighting with Bob and Bob's brother runs up and clocks you in the face, are you innocent?
Define fighting. Are we talking verbally, like back and forth? Or are we talking
Fighting as in
fisticuffs?
throwing punches.
Or throwing punches? No, I would not be innocent because I'm engaging in physical aggressive behavior.
But the other guy still committed a crime.
Did he?
Yes, he ran up and punched you.
He did, and it might have stopped the fight because I might have been cold out
It doesn't
unconscious.
matter. It doesn't matter if you want to if you if you run into a situation or and are objectively defending someone, not that you think you're defending someone emotionally, but if you can't go to court and say, "I'll objectively," I saw him start the fight with my friend Bob. He was hurting Bob real bad. I went up and punched him. So you have a self defense cover. You have to prove your logic. All right. If you can't do that,
Well, they'll also ask if
you're guilty.
is it possible for you to have restrained him without using excessive force, and was punching
No,
him
that
excessive force
doesn't.
or not?
That only applies in wacko Democrat states. In real states, self defense means you can murder the guy.
In real states.
Well,
Shout
yeah,
out to all those fake states.
no, because there's states like did you know who Daniel Penny is?
Not off the top of my head, no.
So there's a guy named Daniel Penny, an ex-marine, a white guy, white relevance. Um, and there was this maniac on the train threatening to cut people and
Are you talking about the
uh,
subway thing?
yeah. So
Yeah, I heard about
he
the
got the
incident.
guy, restrained him, um, and Daniel Penny's a train marine. He knows how to do this whole. The guy died, but not of what Daniel Penny did per se, but they charged him with murder.
Yeah.
And Penny was defending himself and others, and but in a Democrat state, they
Well,
prosecuted him.
yeah, but that's not the law. That's the problem. That's the people who enforce the law. That's the problem. The law would say he's innocent.
Well, no, the law. No, see, the law says he's innocent after the trial.
No. I'm saying according to like if you take this to the thing, like okay, Your Honor, blah 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 blah. Here's the information. He stopped this person from harming a bunch of people, and the process the guy apparently did not survive, albeit of his own demise, as opposed to somebody else interfering with his own health. And they're like, okay, well, you didn't hurt him. You're not the cause of his death.
So
You didn't do any of this
when
type of
that
stuff.
happens,
Therefore, you're good. That's what the law would say according to the legal actual law. But
well,
if you have somebody
no,
saying, "No, I'm going
in
to pin this on you. This is all your fault," blah 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 blah, then yes, that's an abuse of
in
law.
Democrat-run states, the combination of law structured to remove your right to self-defense, plus badly worded law, plus politicians and cops who believe in that shit, lead to
Mm-hmm.
where we
It's
go with Daniel
it's the
Penny.
same reason that some cops will do some violent acts against people, and everyone looks the other way, or the cops themselves look away during violent acts because it's the party that they support or that they're afraid of, whether it be like Antifa or something.
Yeah. The
that
point again,
that's
though,
what
is
I'm saying is that
those politicians in
it's not
those
the
red states.
legal thing that's the problem. It's the people enforcing the legal
You know, in
thing.
New York and California and New Jersey, it is illegal to. It's a problem.
Is there a,
Okay.
a law that says you cannot defend anybody?
There's a law. It's much more difficult. Like for example, if you're in Texas and the witness had said he's defending us, they wouldn't even arrest the guy. They would just gather information and give it to the DA and see if they won't do anything about it.
Well, they would
You know,
tell him like stick around so we can
but
pull you into
that's
court if
enough. They
necessary, but
wouldn't.
they wouldn't do
Whereas
anything crazy.
in New Jersey and New York, even if you have obvious proof of self-defense, they must arrest you.
Yeah, I would call that an unjust action.
Well, but that's the law. I mean, you said
Well,
the
yeah,
law.
it'd be an unjust law. That's how that works.
You know, well, that's the point I'm getting at is, you know, the law is a complicated thing, and what is obvious in some cool places like Texas or
But it doesn't have to
Idaho.
be complicated in that way. It can be complicated without being that kind of complicated.
Well, we
Because
don't have to have
if
communists infesting the Democratic Party, but we do.
yes, but I'm talking like if you say, okay, what if you go to a court and say, Your Honor, what do you believe is theft? And they're like, well, that depends on how you define theft. I'm like, taking of something that is not yours from somebody that it is theirs.
But that's not a definition you can use
Why not?
because it's not in the law.
Okay, so somebody put the wrong definition of theft in the law? Is that what you're saying?
Well, again, you're making some sort of ad hominem attack.
How is that
the law,
how is that an ad hominem? I haven't attacked anybody.
you're attacking the people who passed the law.
No, I'm saying it was incorrectly put in. That's not an ad hominem. If I said the guy who put the definition of theft in has a big belly and has a bald head, that's an ad hominem. That's not me saying he put in incorrect information.
You're saying because they disagree with you as to what the law should be, that something's wrong with them.
No, because then by that definition, I can go into your house, grab something, and leave, and it's not theft. Because that's not what it's in the law.
We're not talking about what you do. We're talking about the way the law is structured.
Well, I'm not talking about the structure. I'm talking the actual law. If I
Yeah.
ask a judge or
when you
a
go
legal
into
advisor,
a trial, right? Let's do Texas versus New York with Daniel Penny, right? They wouldn't even have arrested him in Texas. They would just give it to a prosecutor who might or might not go to the grand jury to see if they're going to charge him for anything.
Well,
right?
he's also going to look at it from a political perspective. Is this going to look bad on my record if I go after this guy for being a hero?
Let's say they did that. Let's say the Texas prosecutor said, okay, we're going to take Daniel Penny to trial for murder as well. Now, in both New York and Texas, the defense, you submit a motion for summary judgment to say there's no evidence. Well, you submit one saying there's probable cause, there's no evidence for the charge. Another one is that's early in the thing. Another one's going to be right before the trial begins. He says there's that the law says my client is innocent and you shouldn't be on trial to begin with. That's what you're going to submit a motion for. Now, in Texas, under the law, the judge look at it and say, yeah, he's innocent. I'm not letting the trial go on. In New York, under the law, he's going to say, the law says he could be guilty, therefore I'm not the trial go on. Because the law in New York is structured and worded in such a way that you don't necessarily have a right to defend yourself in that circumstance.
So as long as I legally figure out what is or isn't theft, I can steal, basically.
Well, it comes down to there are things you could get away with in one state that you can't get in another.
Well, I know that California's thing is like if it's under $900, then you can steal it.
In New York, Daniel Penny and all the people on the subway car are supposed to run away to other subway cars, not defend themselves. That's what the law says. Okay. Whereas in Texas, you don't have to run away to defend yourself. You can just stand there and kill the guy.
Yeah. And anybody who thinks that they live in a good state if they do that is mentally deranged. But despite that, kind of wrapping this back into gaming, from the legal perspective, could it go wrong? Yes. Is it already going wrong? Abso-flippin-lutely. Whether it's one person who plays the game or nobody plays the game, if somebody decides down the line, I'd like to play this game, and they cannot play that game, especially of a game that they purchased, you're depriving them of something that they did actually purchase.
I don't disagree with you. All I'm saying is I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
I'm saying the baby's already out with the bathwater. We're past that point. Because that's what's happening. Is they're actively going into Steam libraries and removing stuff from people's libraries because they stopped the service. And that's my point is that it's the game company's fault for making a game that does not need to be always online, and not having an end of life plan to be like, we're going to make this game, we're going to turn it off and just go make a different game, close down, who knows, whatever the case might be. We're going to do that, and then it's no big deal, no sweat off our backs. But then the people who actually play the game or have not played the game yet but are anticipating to do so and can no longer have access to something that they were trying to purchase, or that they already did purchase, I should say, they should have the accessibility to get access to what they purchased, which is why it's like, if it's all on the client, well, then just move it to the client from the server side. So if it's on the server, move it to the client. But I'm not convinced that Pirate Software understands this concept. So I had another video that we didn't get to watch last week, but it's much shorter. It's like half the length, so we could probably get through it a little bit quicker because
Go for it.
hopefully this is a clarification aspect. And I want him to clarify. Something tells me he's not going to clarify it, and something tells me he's going to still get it wrong. And
Just don't interrupt him every 15 seconds.
well, then tell him not to be wrong every 15 seconds. That's the problem here. But anyway, let me know if you can't hear this.
Hi, my name is Jason Thorhall, also
I
known
can hear
as
it.
Pirate Software. And
Okay.
Hi, my name is Jason Thorhall, also known as Pirate
YouTube
Software.
reloading.
And the other day I put out a video called Stop Killing Games, saying why I would not support the initiative. Overall, it was actually quite positive. The analytics on it show that people really think it's a good idea. There's a huge amount of like ratio, and I received hundreds of comments from developers thanking me for putting it out because they can't speak publicly while they're at a business or a job elsewhere. A lot of the times, major companies will fire you
Receipts.
if you're speaking out of turn and cause a PR disaster for those companies. And since this is such a popular thing among players, most devs aren't going to say anything to you. So I am. So let's discuss the most common requirement of the initiative, which is games have to be left in a functional, playable state. Now, what happens if that game is a online-only live service game? Well, if you want that to stay in a functional, playable state, that means the devs have to release either server binaries or somehow carve off the game to be a single-player experience now. Some way to keep it functional and playable, right? Now, many of you are requesting, yes, I should get the server binaries so that I can go and make private servers for this. But that doesn't make a lot of sense in the real world. And the reason why is because it leaves developers open to abuse. So let's explore that a little bit. Let's say that you made your own video game, and you made a live service game. Maybe it's an MMO, maybe it's something else, right? And let's say that I want to monetize that game, but you don't allow monetization of the game by any other party. This makes sense because most creators don't allow for that. You can't just take someone else's art and profit off of it. Normal, right? So then I go, well, how am I going to force you?
Is he making the argument I think he's about to make where somebody's going to abuse the devs by making money off of their work? Was that literally what he's thinking he's going to say? Is that the
Let's
answer?
just listen.
Well, the reason I'm saying is because you can't do that already because somebody owns the IP.
Well, there's nothing wrong in the sense you can make a profit on other people's art. You just gotta pay them for it.
Well, you'd have to license it out or something of that
Yeah.
nature. Sure. But he's making it seem like these people are just going to make profit. Like if Guild Wars 2 or Guild Wars 1 goes offline, that I can start selling Guild Wars 1 willy-nilly just because. And no, I can't. I'll get DCMA'd, I'll get sued, I'll get a whole bunch of things because you can't just do that. I can't just take this shirt and go print a whole bunch and sell them because somebody has the rights to this shirt image. Like, that's not how that works.
To do this. Under this initiative, you would have to release the server binaries or keep the game in a functional, playable state at end of life.
I don't know why it sounds really low, so I'm going to bump it up.
So I hit you with a ton of bots. I hit
No,
you with a
it's
ton
too
of
loud.
exploits. I attack your community. I destroy your Reddit. I go after your business. I go everywhere that I possibly can to make this cost as much as it possibly
I can technically do that without the other. So what's the point?
can for you. And it's not hard to do this. We saw the exact same thing happen in TF2 recently. The massive amount of bots that were attacking the game. This is not infeasible. This is something that is very easily attainable today. And let's say that this goes on long enough that your game dies because you can't afford it anymore, and your studio has to shut down. At end of life, you now have to release those server binaries to keep the game in a functional, playable state. At which point I take those, I create a private server, and I monetize it. And some people have said, well, simply don't allow monetization of the server. Well, who's going to enforce that? If you want a government initiative to enforce that, that means the government has to build a registry of all of those games and all of that intellectual property that shouldn't be monetized. And then somehow...
Or, simpler, if it's reported that you are monetizing something and you are not supposed to be monetizing something because you don't have the rights to that thing, you get sued out of the wazoo. You lose all the money you made and then some, because punishments have to be worse than meh. You can't just be like, well, we'll punish them to neutral. No, you have to punish them beyond the neutral so that they don't do it to begin with.
Yeah, but
That's
how would
it
you
works.
know? That's the thing. Like, 'cause there's a lot of
If I
private
can
worlds.
find a private server, like if I type in Guild Wars 1 private server like that, and somebody's out there
There are.
selling it, I go in, I
I
pay
don't
them
go.
$5, and then boom, I'm like, hey, ArenaNet, somebody's doing this to you. Or if I'm the
Well,
actual
okay.
employee for ArenaNet and I go in there and I
I
do
will
that.
give you an example. Okay, I personally don't like keep up with them, but at one point I did. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of private World of Warcraft servers that are monetized. They charge you to use their server,
Okay.
and nothing happened. I mean, it's occasionally someone gets caught, but they'll just reload another server or somewhere else and keep making money.
And I have mixed feelings on that because of how I feel about copyrights and whatnot. My initial feeling is if I'm paying for server upkeep and that's all I'm asking for charging aspects, I don't particularly see that as a problem. But if I'm saying like, well, Warcraft charged $15 a month, so I'm going to charge $15 a month, that's a bit much because that's not how much servers cost. So I would I'd have problems with that from an ethical standpoint. But at the same time, if you're killing your game and it's dissipating and you're not willing to maintain it, that means you're not willing to be paid for it. In some semblance, you could arguably um, allow a monetization of that because they can't do it per se if you're active without probably getting more retribution, arguably. But as you're saying, people do it anyway, and it's like, well, yes, but they can also ban your account if they catch you doing it, this, that, or the other, whatever the case might be. That it's a lot touchier than I would prefer because to me it should be more cut and dry. But obviously, no one cares about my opinion. I would lean more towards the side that is, I cannot sell someone else's stuff,
Well,
regardless of whoever's it is,
you're not
unless.
supposed, you're not supposed to do that, but the mob has been doing that for 100 years. So, you know.
Sure, but the mob's never done anything wrong, so I stand by that. But um, I'm saying, like, let's say Nintendo comes out with a Mario game. I can't just take that, copy paste, and then slide it over. But if I have like images or something of like my own interpretation of Mario and I sell that, it's technically a trademark, but it's my work of that trademark. And this is allowed in some aspects, although legally speaking, if they know about it, they're not supposed to allow it. Which is why you're only allowed to sell a couple hundred copies if you're like a comic book or an artist or whatever the case might be.
Yeah.
But if you were to sell thousands and tens of thousands of them, they'd notice and they'd have to take action. But 100, they kind of let slip under the radar because they could just pretend they don't know. But if somebody brings it to their attention, then there's nothing they can do. They have to legally protect their stuff. But I also feel like it's like, okay, well, you could protect it, but if they're not making any money off of it, other people making money off of it's irrelevant, in my humble opinion. Because it's the same thing. Like if you go to I don't know if you've ever played a Nintendo
Well,
DS
that's why
games.
I think abandonware should go to the public domain.
Sure.
Just
so if you discontinue something, it's public domain. Anybody can profit off of it. Blah 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 blah. Sure. But it has to be for that specific thing. It can't just be for the entire franchise in general. It's not like like if they make Mario 1 and then they abandon it and then they make Mario 2, but Mario 2 is active, just because you have access to Mario 1 as public domain does not mean you can make Mario 2 stuff. That kind of thing. But if you, for whatever reason, go in there and say we're not making. Let me go back to where I was saying because I'm starting to lose my brain. Did you ever participate in the Nintendo DS, 3DS, 3DS XL?
I don't do consoles.
Okay, well, handhelds, but yeah. 3DS
The last
XL.
console I had was a PlayStation, I think.
Ew.
Or an
Gay.
Xbox One.
Okay,
I think
that's kind of more normal.
no, you know what? Okay, so I had a PlayStation. I had a bunch of games I enjoyed on that. Then I had then I got a GameCube because there was one game on GameCube I was obsessed over.
Smash Bros.
No, the Godzilla game.
Oh, Destroy All Monsters.
Yeah, and then
yes, that was a fun
my
game.
brother wanted, but then I got tired of it. I was like, and it was gathering dust. And my brother like, I'll trade you my Xbox for the GameCube because he got the next thing after Xbox. So I got a whole bunch of games for that I enjoyed for a while. You know. And then my arthritis got so much that I can't play with the console controller anymore. You know,
Well,
so
let me learn you some 3DS history. So this is a real experience I had, and I was furious when it happened. So the eShop for the DSs, they ended up taking it down. But they were getting us like a heads up beforehand saying,
Yeah.
hey, in a couple months or 6 months or whatever, went from the
Yeah.
announcement, we're going to be taking the eShop down, blah, 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 blah. Well, I didn't find out that the eShop was being taken down until a month after it got taken down, because I hadn't touched my 3DS, and I picked it up and I was like, oh, I'll play some games. And yeah, go to figure and find out that they had Pokemon games for like $5 to $10 for the digital versions of all the classic versions.
okay.
But they were legit copies, so any Pokemon that you were breeding or capture would be considered as legit coded actual Pokemon. And I was like, oh, I can play on a backlit screen. This would be freaking fantastic. And there's also ways you can jimmy rig it so it could put it on a screen on like your monitor or something. But I was like, I could play this. This would be great. So I go to buy it because I read an article saying like, oh, yeah, pick this up before it ends. Turns out the article was written a lot earlier, and I missed that window where I could have gotten like a bunch of games for like under $100. And I was like, Nintendo, please let me give you money. And they're like, no. And I'm like, okay. But if you were to, homebrew your computer, homebrew your DS, and make it, you have like jailbreak it where you have access to all the digital games ever for the ever and ever and ever, amen, that's a problem. I'm like, you killed this system. You're the reason it should be considered abandonware.
Yeah.
And I have been telling you to, like, there's no reason to not have the eShop open. It's literally more money, but it's because they're trying to turn the Switch systems into a subscription service, which I despise with every bone in my body. I don't want to pay a monthly fee to play games that I could just buy outright, even if I have to pay more money in the lifespan of me playing that game than it is to just do the subscription.
Yeah, it gets annoying.
Well, it's like I can go buy like how much I paid, like, I don't know, $80 for this after it was used, $80 or $90, because it's hard to find. It's a rare find, and it's in a very, very good condition. But if Xbox is like, we have this digital, and you can't find a physical copy anywhere for X amount of reasons, just there weren't many printed, and many people have them, but they're all like destroyed or stowed away somewhere, and you don't have access to purchase it, but you really want to play it. I had another copy prior to this. I just don't know where the disc went. So I have two covers, and I looked for the other cover, and I couldn't find the cover either. It's really annoying. But I want to play this game because nostalgia, and I love the Punisher, and it's a fun game, and you can do lots of terrible things in it. So I was like, I'll play this game, whatever. And if Xbox is like, well, hey, we're doing a thing where we're selling this digitally, and then I go to buy it, and I find out like a month prior they closed down the shop that they didn't need to close down, but they did that because they're doing a new service thing. They're trying to push you. That's why they try to kill the games, is because they can suck a lot of money out of you. They can track what you're doing, sell ad information to make money, all that type of stuff. But then they can just cancel it and move to the next thing and force you to move into that stuff. That's just.
But it is the nature of predatory animals to always exploit their prey. Okay, humans are predatory animals, so you expect that if someone's trying to exploit you for profit, you have to expect that everyone's going to do that.
I would also say that's innovative, whatever the term might be, because you have no push as a company to do better. Like, we know this from Game Freak and Pokemon Company and Nintendo when they released Scarlet and Violet, because Pokemon Legends Arceus came out, and it was freaking amazing. We're like, oh my gosh, you did this in the 3D big giant world, basically like Ocarina of Time and Pokemon world. And I was like, oh, this is great. And then they're like, oh, they're going to make Scarlet and Violet. This is going to be huge. It's going to be gorgeous. It's going to be massive. It's going to be freaking awesome. And then we get it, and it runs horrible. Like, it was not optimized. But now we're seeing a game from Game Freak that's not in the Pokemon area, and it's basically like Stellar Blade.
Yeah.
and it's gorgeous. And we're like, okay, so we know they can do it. They just didn't do it. Now, it could have been Game Freak was told not to go too far by the Pokemon Company and Nintendo, or even their own head up or whatever, for a Pokemon game, because they can put as little effort as they want to, and people will just buy it mindlessly because, normies. But the problem is that Power World showed up, and Power World showed them up. And now they like, oh, we're going to take them to court, blah, 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 blah. The reason they're attacking Power World and not all the other things like Temtem or whatever, even though Temtem is arguably much better looking than Pokemon, the reason being is that this is actually a threat. Power World is a threat because now people see Power World and say, well, why does my Pokemon game not look like that? Why is the next 10 Pokemon games that come out like a decade later, why are they not looking this good? And then it makes Nintendo look bad. That's why they're upset. And they're trying to use every possible trick in the book to dethrone Power World. But Power World could just make some minor changes and still make them look bad. They just don't seem to understand that. So, in the grand scheme of things, and things like Temtem, for example, Temtem's a game I am heartbroken about. Because I don't know if you know what Temtem is, but you can look it up on Steam. It's also on all the other consoles and stuff. But Temtem is a game that you buy, I think, like $40, $43, whatever the case might be now. It was different when it was in beta, or early access, I should say. And it's basically Pokemon, but they took all of the arduous, mind-numbing things about Pokemon, chucked them, but then kept all the good stuff. So, like in Pokemon, if you'd walk up to water, you'd have to click on it. Do you want to swim? Click. This thing, or your Pokemon uses surf or whatever, and then you jump on the back, and there's little pictures and everything, and it takes like a whole freaking 15 seconds animation and everything to get onto the water. Well, Temtem's like, just walk up, boop, you're on a board, and now you're going. Like, it smoothed the transition between on land and on sea, and they made everything super smooth. The Temtems, or they're called Tems, they look great. It's all that great stuff. The problem is they made it always online. And I said, when's the single player version of this coming out? We're not going to ever do a single player. Keep in mind, you bought the game, so Stop Killing Games as an initiative would, by definition, if it was referring to things that were prior made, as in some shape or form, would force them to have a single player mode, because it could run in single player mode, just like Pokemon games are in single player mode.
Okay. We're rehashing this. Let's get this guy's video over with.
Enforce that with no one owning it, because those studios have shut down. That's going to be a massive burden. On top of that, if you want to go the other route and say the company
How is that a burden? If the studio shut down, there's no one to pay.
has to go and control it, well, what if the company's not around anymore? Is that just able to be monetized now? Again, this was obtained through abuse of the original creator. I don't think that's a good route. And this scenario gets even worse if you do allow monetization, because now I can just kill off your company and then monetize the server and no one will ever come after me.
If your company can be killed off that way, then your little private server can be killed off the same way, hypothetically speaking. So I don't understand this argument, per se. Like, if you're such a frail company that you're going to let a bot or some weird type of exploit or the community, like, just make better stuff. That's the problem with the current gaming world, is that the current gaming world just doesn't make good quality stuff in the AAA sphere. There are exploits, there are problems in the community, there are problems with bots because they're not making stuff to bypass that. They're releasing crap products. But if that's the case, if you're going to just shutter your doors, fire everybody, then yeah, you probably would deserve to lose whatever financial income that you would have gained otherwise. Because it was there, it was fed to you on a plate, and you freaking threw it out because you couldn't handle because of your fees or something? Like,
you can't handle the plate.
You can't handle the plate.
Now it's even more of a problem. So,
well, why can't devs just be innovative and come up with a way to do this without, because communities that love their product that they're playing will protect that product from the bots. They'll do the mass reports. They'll get rid of the bots. They'll, ask the devs to patch the exploits. They'll ask the community, like they'll come together as a community and push out the interlocutors. Like they'll do these things because they care. They don't do those things because they don't care, because the product in which they're being sold isn't as good as what it could be. And if somebody in a private server saying, I'll do it better, because like if the world, like a Minecraft server, for example, a private Minecraft server could potentially make a whole bunch of changes, have a bunch of mods, a whole bunch of things in it. It's not just the normal Minecraft experience. They put extra into it. And so them getting money is like they did extra work. They developed things. They made mods. They did whatever the case is. And that's what you're paying for. You're not paying for the Minecraft. The Minecraft you still buy from Microsoft. Like, Microsoft's getting their money regardless. Anything else after that is irrelevant. Even if they do have Realms. But Realms is there for people to purchase if they want to, but not everyone can afford to purchase it. So that's the whole point.
Allowing monetization of this work is strictly worse. And for those of you out there that say, oh, this can be done right now, I could just destroy your studio and take your stuff anyway. You could, but this allows a route for it to be legal to do so. That's the problem.
It's not illegal to do so, as it is to destroy someone's company by saying mean words. It's not illegal.
After putting this out publicly and talking to people about it, this specific scenario on both YouTube and Discord and Reddit and a bunch of other locations, I got a couple of takes back. We're going to start with the most extreme position and kind of go from there. So, in the most extreme, people said live service games shouldn't exist at all, and the initiative will kill them off for good, and that's a good thing. Well, you don't get to define what players get to play or not play. You also shouldn't be able to get to...
You're literally doing that by saying that they shouldn't be able to keep the games that they purchased.
define what developers build or don't build. You should not have creative control over the developers.
I think what we're saying as the gamers aspect, I think your mic switched over or something. I think your mic switched over because it was picking me up. I think what the problem is here is that us gamers are saying, devs, companies, whoever, be responsible about what you're producing and be aware of the entirety from the open to close. Don't just run in there thinking it's going to be a quick cash grab and then grab the cash and then dump everything.
You again, we're circling the same thing. Let him finish. You know?
Well, I know, but I'm responding to his direct sayings.
And you should not have control over what is in my Steam library or on my phone. That doesn't make any goddamn sense. Aside from that, the initiative does not purport to kill live service games. It would just make it incredibly difficult to build said games and add a lot of risk to it, which is why I'm bringing all of this
No, it wouldn't.
up and why I don't support the initiative in the first place. A lot of people don't realize that this will slowly diminish live service games in the market because it's not an incentive for us to build them anymore, which means you get less multiplayer live experiences.
We had plenty of multiplayer live experiences before live services became the norm. So what are you saying?
That sucks. I like live service games. I enjoy playing things like Final Fantasy XIV. I enjoy going and playing in games in the past, at least, like League of Legends. These are games that are live service. They require a live service to run. And you shouldn't be able to take that away from people. And if that's your only position on this, now
Is it just me, or is it ironic where you shouldn't be able to take this away from people when our very own position is we want to be able to enjoy this stuff that we paid for, and you shouldn't be able to take this away from us? And he's like, no, we should be able to. And then now he's saying, you can't take this away from me. And then we're like, no, you should be able to.
not only are you disingenuous in what the initiative is purporting to try and achieve, but
Good sir, my brother in Christ, you have been nothing but disingenuous because you haven't even understood the actual thing. And you have purportedly not done anything to change my mind about that.
you're also aggressively attacking other players instead of trying to fix something. So the next one is that this is about games preservation and that it needs to happen to preserve these types of games for future generations and for everyone to always have forever. But I would argue that this isn't actually preserving these games. Social games, such as, let's say, Apex Legends, require a number of
Trash game for multiple reasons, by the way.
players to be in the match at the same time so that you can have an experience that is only able to be obtained through lots of players interacting, right? It's a multiplayer game. You need a bunch of people. How many of you
I mean, AI bots have existed, like Time Splitters, anyone, Medal of Honor, Rising Sun, a whole bunch of games.
have felt negatively when an MMO dies Or when a live service game dies, oh, dead game. There's only 5 people online. Why would I play that? So why would you want to preserve a game in that state? That doesn't make any sense.
Maybe you have a community of, 100 people and you want to play multiple matches simultaneously and do a tournament style or anything you could possibly come up with that is feasible, that is possible.
Just because it doesn't make sense to him doesn't mean it won't make sense to other people. I mean,
Yeah, but I'm saying it's like he's making it seem like his outcome is the only possible outcome, which doesn't make any sense because there's tons of outcomes I can't even think of, you wouldn't be able to think of, and nobody else would be able to think of that would still happen because somebody's going to come up with a concept. Like, I would love to figure out a way to play Time Splitters 2 and Time Splitters Future Perfect, which is Time Splitters 3, with people on YouTube and just be like, let's make a little community of people, but it has built-in bots. So I can play by myself with just pure bots and get a fun experience out of it. It's like, it doesn't make any sense.
Any sense to me. You want
Pun intended.
to take down these live service games, put them up on a private server.
We don't want to take them down. They're chucking them already. That's the whole problem. When a game is being chucked, we're saying it needs to be preserved. That's it.
And then play it with a couple of people. You're not bringing it
And if it's fun for me to play with a couple people, your entire argument is thrown out the window, good sir.
back at its height. You're not taking a snapshot of what the game
It doesn't need to be its height. That's a terrible argument.
actually is. You're making it limp on in a way that doesn't make any sense. That's not preservation. And for those that may
That is actually preservation. I have a hard time believing this guy works in the gaming industry if he doesn't know what he's saying is absolute BS.
stop there and go, but private server's going to have a lot of players.
He
Look
runs
at all
a
the ones.
gaming company.
What?
He actually runs a gaming company.
I feel sorry for that gaming company because it couldn't possibly be doing good things. Or he's really biased.
Off of these live service games. He clearly is running up with that.
Maybe. And it's extremely biased, and he should open up with, I'm biased because I make monies off of this. I make money off of screwing you people out of games after a while. Like, that should be his motto. I don't see that being a good motto for him, but whatever.
For World of Warcraft. Again, we talked about that. It opens up a route for abuse of the developers, so that is not a solution. And the last take that I got
Then make it so it's not an abusive system before it even becomes a problem. That's the point.
from this is, and it's the most reasonable to me, this is an initiative. It's not a law. Why are you upset? Just wait. I'm not going to wait. And the reason I'm not going to wait is because I see the start of this conversation not making sense. It's not including the actual developer side of the conversation. It's not showing the trials and problems that this could arise inside of the gaming industry for people who are actually making.
See, now he's arguing for problems and stuff that could potentially happen, but is ignoring the problems that are actively happening. That doesn't make sense to me. Why would you worry more about things that could happen, that are not guaranteed to happen, than the things that are actually happening and we do know are happening?
The games you play. I don't have any reason to be quiet about that. And many other developers aren't going to be able to speak on this. As I explained before, it's really easy to lose your job if you're working at a major studio and try to speak out of turn on something like this, especially with something people are so passionate about.
So, why do I care what 100 devs say when they have clearly an anti-game concept or an anti-preservation concept?
Doesn't make any sense to stay quiet. And it also doesn't make any sense to wait until it's in a different form when I see that it has so many problems with the language as it is currently written.
You still haven't provided us with an alternative language format, good sir.
Should be able to be talking about this. In fact, I should be talking about this. I am a content creator specifically that is a game developer that has worked in this industry for 20 years.
I don't care. I literally don't care. Give me a counter. Give me something constructive to replace the current wording if that is your concern. You claim it's your concern, but you haven't given us anything to work with.
Agreed.
This is my wheelhouse. This is what I do. So for those who are...
That's an argument of authority. If I ever heard it, it is absolutely irrelevant because you still haven't provided us with something that actually could make Stop Killing Games better than it is already. Like that should be your goal. Not killing it. Pun intended.
Calling for me to just be silent and sit in the corner?
Nobody's asking you to be... If somebody's asking you to be silent and sit in the corner, ignore them. But don't just spurg out when somebody says, I want to preserve games. You're not preserving games. You're abusing developers. There's not a good, reasonable, logical thought process of allegedly somebody who works in the development industry unless you have something to lose, which makes you biased and not interested at all in preserving games.
No. With all of that being said, I do think there's a consumer protection thing that we can fix here. It's just not really what the initiative is about.
What is it then?
I think that if you're going to buy a live service game, you shouldn't be told you're buying the game. You shouldn't be told that you're purchasing the game. You should be told explicitly that you are purchasing a license to that game. The reason why is because that license needs to be revoked anytime that you are cheating at the game and damaging the play experience of other players. While this is written in the TOS and the EULA, it's usually not clearly defined at point of sale. Or they throw a giant
I would agree with that.
TOS in front of you and
It's the most reasonable thing you said.
it doesn't really do anything because people skip past it. If at point of sale it says specifically, there's specific language stating that you are either leasing or purchasing a license or anything along those lines.
The term purchasing a license is very muddy in terms of, am I purchasing as I own it? Because if I own a license, can the license be revoked? Well, it's a license. It's not an owning. So,
Yeah,
yes.
a license can be revoked. We've been through that. Yeah.
I know what I'm saying is like the term purchasing a license. Purchase means I own it. It cannot be revoked. But a license can be revoked. So purchasing a license is kind of counterintuitive to explaining to somebody what they're actually doing.
Well, you're purchasing a license versus purchasing a product. I mean, that's what it comes down.
But I would be leasing a license. I would not be purchasing a license.
Well, a license inherently is like a limited like, so like when you get your driver's license, you don't have the right to drive forever just because you got it once.
I mean, if you're competent at one point in your life, you technically are competent.
No, but you have to renew that license and then it can be taken away from you.
Sure. I mean, there's a whole argument. But the biggest argument I hear is, like, when you buy, I don't know.
Look, he's clearly
So-
coming at the
August Burns Red, Thrill Seeker, 25-year anniversary remake or whatever they did, etc. If I buy that, do I own the game? Or not own the game, own the CD, or do I own a license to listen to the stuff on the CD? Because a lot of people say, "Oh, you just own the license to listen to the CD. You don't have
under
actual."
the law. You own. It's a really iffy question because like you can't go like for example you can't take your CD and go play it at a bar. You don't have a commercial. You don't have a commercial license.
As a business, no, but as a Patreon, yes, I could. I could walk in there and just blare it on my phone. Nothing they could do.
But you couldn't charge for it though. You couldn't like.
Well, sure, but if somebody comes up and gives me $5 and says that was great, man, I'm not gonna be like, "Nah, I didn't charge for it. He just gave it to me."
Yeah.
It's like, but even in that situation, who's going to come after you? Are you going to register every person's phone, and every time it's played, it's going to automatically, your phone's going to go and say, how many people are around? Is anybody paying this person? Blah, 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 blah. Are we going to, like, if you're going to get that crazy about things, just don't release things if you're that worried about it. Don't make anything. Never make anything. Make everything collapse in the entirety of the world because you're too scared somebody out there might make a profit of some measure off of your labor. If you're not satisfied with the profit you're making, then just don't make anything. Don't make profit. That's the logical choice to go with. It's stupid in terms of like, yeah, that's not realistic. But if that's your argument, it's like, oh, somebody out there might make money off of something that I made, so therefore, well, then don't make money. Pretty simple.
That you're not actually buying the game directly, I think it would go a long way to informing consumers
Putting "you are not the owner of this game" on a label of something would probably help people understand.
of what they're doing and protect them from some of these business.
But again, a lot of the stuff in terms of like when you purchase a game like World of Warcraft, Guild Wars or something, or Temtem, you're purchasing the game. And whether it be a live service only or always online, whatever the case might be, is irrelevant because I've purchased something. It's not a free to play. If it's a free to play, his argument has a lot of weight. I understand his argument from a free to play perspective. You bought microtransactions is basically saying this product that you purchase from us lasts only as long as this game is alive.
Mm-hmm.
That would make sense. Sure, go that. That's a constructive system. He could be telling me right now, and he is not doing it. Why?
business practices that they didn't realize they were engaging in. That makes a lot more sense to me.
There's a spider in my wall, and I'm trying to ignore it, but it's getting really annoying.
then force all developers to leave the game in a functional, playable state. And that's about it. That's all I really wanted to talk about with this. I hope that's clarified some things for.
Be a giant spider.
I don't know. It's like a brown recluse or something. I don't know.
I would kill that thing before it attacks one of your kids.
Well, I am going to kill it, but it hasn't moved in the last couple minutes, so I'm hoping it won't move until we can finish this recording. So,
Okay.
it's dying. Don't worry. It's not a daddy long leg. I'd leave daddy long legs alone, but this guy drives me up a wall, and I wish I could reach out to him and be like, I'd love to chat with you, and let's hash this out. Let's make people understand, and then I could. I mean, preferably grab him and Ross from the Stop Killing Games initiative, put them on the same stream, and say, "Okay, Ross, make your claim on or your not your claim, make your presentation of what Stop Killing Games actually legitimately is, as well as you can put it, and that you would be able to put in front of lawmakers." All right, he makes the presentation. Then I go to Pirate Software and say, "All right, Pirate Software, what do you find wrong with this, and how would you fix this? How would you change the presentation in a way that benefits the developers and the gamers? Gamers just want to play their game. That's it. If somebody wants to step in and abuse that, that's somebody else, not gamers. That's somebody in between that's trying to make a quick buck." You were saying something, Matt?
Well, I'm kind of agreeing with you. I'm just
okay. I'm hearing sounds, and I don't know if it's me or
just remember he his kind of a perspective of the games he creates for his company. So
sure, but if that's the case, then you'd think he'd have that same solution for his own company. Then it's like, okay, if he was to be abused, as he would say, the devs would be abused by this particular situation, but bots, exploits, community, and make it too expensive to run, whatever the case might be. If that's the case, how would he deal with it? And then tell us, so we could say, you know what? Maybe that makes a lot of sense, and we can update the Stop Killing Games initiative to where it puts that into consideration.
Well, he said he's going to do more videos, so maybe I'll have another video on it.
I haven't heard anybody talk about any of his other videos outside of these ones.
No, he said in the last video, because the last video we did was a follow-up to another video. He said in the last video...
This is a follow-up to that video, ironically.
Well, he said in the last video he's going to do a series of videos about this topic.
I'll have to look him up to see if he actually does talk more about them. But even if he does, he's going to talk about it and say, this isn't good, this isn't good, this isn't good. I'm not interested in him saying this isn't good. I want him to say, this doesn't help developers, but here's how I'd fix it so it would not come across as negative. It would come across as, I want it to succeed, but I want it to succeed correctly and be in favor of both gamers and devs, and I could be behind that.
How long ago did he put this video out?
How what?
How long ago did he put this video out?
I don't know. I will take a ganders. Doop-dap. Probably last week, I'd imagine. Oh, no, this one's 10 months ago. Holy frick.
So for our next video or whatever, see if he did a part 3.
I'll take a gander at his stuff and see if he has made it anymore. But it's infuriating because all of this stuff is coming out now, like actively now. His takes on Stop Killing Games have been just popping up like hotcakes. And I've not heard him come out through the grapevine of everybody else commenting on this. I haven't heard him come through the grapevine saying, "Oh, he moved." Hey, we're this, that, and the other. Nothing has happened so far from his mouth that I can tell. But I will check his channel, see if he has any updates. But I don't feel he is capable of coming up with a solution, because if he did, I feel like that would be the thing. And you got Ross would come out and say, hey, he's come up, clarified some stuff, and we want to merge with that concept and think that it's viable for all of us. So let's do this. That's what I think could work.
Well, we'll find out. I mean, if there's no part 3, he never did. We'll see.
Yeah, basically. And if you don't get another video about him, he didn't make another one. Or if we talk about another video, it'll be something more relevant to the current happenings of it.
we'll do next week before we get into the video. Going to be able to say whether you found a part 3 or not. So
Yeah. So anyway,
we do follow up with our content.
yeah, spruce it up. But that's all I had for this particular video. We'll keep it short so I can kill a spider. It's like this big. So, Matt, what you got coming on? You got Wednesday, Thursday as usual?
The usual Wednesday night wrestling show, and we'll be talking about. Well, we would have talked about, since you guys want to see this for the weekend or sometime thereafter, the night of the champions event that's happened at WWE, and then this week on Roman, meaning Thursday past, we'll be talking about our favorite patriotic movies in honor of 4th of July, and then next week is the big one on Roman show. However, next Thursday we'll be talking about the new Superman movie.
All this will obviously be in retrospect because they won't get this video out yet. So...
The next week on Roman show, in theory, they'll still watch us on Saturday or Sunday, and therefore next Thursday's Roman show, not this week's Roman show, would be in the future.
Cool. All right.
So that's going to be the big topic: is Gunn's Superman film woke trash, or
You mean is Superman's James Gunn film? You mean as the joke's been going?
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm hopefully gonna have a video out on Friday. I'm trying to add another one in there since I do my streams on Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. If you would like to get a free game or potentially get a free game, do a game giveaway on the Discord. So down in the description, join the Discord, and you might win a game. I think right now we got like Tomb Raider 1 through 3 on GOG, the remakes. I think there's a Star Wars game, one of the Starfighter games, I think. The old school ones is on there, and a whole bunch of stuff for Epic Games. I don't use it, so I'm
is the best one on there?
Huh?
Is the best one on there X-Wing versus TIE Fighter?
I don't know. Let me check real quick.
That's arguably the greatest video game of all time.
Might be. I gotta go to game giveaways.
Oh, I think I'll say
Star Wars Rebellion.
Oh, yeah.
Is this one? I kind of just get keys and I'm like, hey, I can give these away. Sure, why not? So
I do want to give one sort of condolence out there. Normally I talk about this on a Roman show, but so we love the comic world. Lost Jim Shooter this week.
I think I heard about that. Yeah,
the greatest comic book creator of all time. He started as a teenager writing Legion of Superheroes in the 70s, like a 14-year-old, and it was the most well-written comics you'll ever see when he started writing it. And then in the 80s, he became editor-in-chief of Marvel during their greatest era of comics of all time. The comics, he was a stickler for your writing, your artwork being submitted on time, being published on time, you know. And then, of course, in the 90s, he started Valiant Comics, which unfortunately got hosed because one of the business partners who owned Valiant with him screwed the company.
shocking.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, I think I told you about this with that. So I was at a convention where I met Shooter and one of his VPs, and his VP is one of the guys who screwed the company over. I said to them something like, so it's oddly prescient. I was like, you guys got a great company. And we're talking about the context, like there are a lot of people exploiting comics for like fake collectors, but buying first edition, like issue ones, and not to collect the comic, but have 15 of them so I could sell them later, like an investment, right? And so what this guy did on Valiant, this VP, him and I think two other guys, was they artificially inflated the number of Valiant comics being printed, right? So they would print, like, let's say, instead of the normal amount of, like, say, 40,000, they'd print like an extra 20,000 copies and pocket them for themselves so they could sell them as an investment later. And when that came out, it basically destroyed Valiant Comics. Shooter had nothing to do with it. So I said to Shooter and his VP, I really hope the fake investors exploiting comics don't destroy the comic book industry to them. And and I'm trying to be prescient, but because it also destroyed Marvel. It destroyed there was a great comics crash in the late 90s because of that. But Shooter again, he rebounded. I mean, he never reached the heights of success they did with Marvel and Valiant again after that. But he had more success in comics. And the guy was, I mean, yeah, people complain about him as a boss, but as a person, he was a good, decent guy. So
I'd also like to announce good news: the spider is dead.
yes, let's
So
certainly communicate.
I took care of business. But yeah, join the Discord, hang out, come see the little live streams on Tuesday nights. I would have, I guess, a total of 3 videos out every week if that happens. So Sundays, Tuesdays, Fridays, repeat. And if I can squeeze out more, I will try to find a way. But I'm trying to find it to spread it out a bit, and it depends all on what's in the news and all that kind of stuff. Live streaming games will just continue to be a thing because I like gaming and interacting with you guys. So check that out. Game giveaways will be limited times because keys are only active for a certain amount of time. So you get them or you don't get them. That kind of stuff. But I also just come hang out, and if we play games together, I just recently got MechWarrior 5 back up and running, with some co-op stuff that makes some gameplay a bit more fun, and you can run lances together and whatnot. If there's something to play and it's something we can all play, like ESO, Guild Wars, whatever the case might be, I'd be happy to play with people if they would like to. So that's everything I think I have, good sir. We'll just have, I guess, the next week as we go. So thanks everybody for hanging out. I guess we'll just see you in whatever next devious nonsense I come up with. So thanks everybody for hanging out, and remember, my friends, walk in the light.